The US is rushing to replenish crucial medical supplies after recording another daily high in coronavirus deaths. More than 880 people have died in the past 24 hours, taking the toll past 5,000. The youngest victim is a 6-week-old baby. With more than 200,000 cases, the US is by far the worst-hit country in the world. It has more cases than the next two worst-hit nations, Italy and Spain, combined. Stockpiles of protective equipment and medical supplies are nearly exhausted. This has reportedly led to the federal government and individual states competing for them. There have also been calls for a national lockdown, but it's a move not favored by the president.
There are some states that don't have much of a problem. There are some, well, they don't have the problem. They don't have thousands of people that are positive, with thousands of people that even think they might have it, or hundreds of people in some cases. So you have to look at states. You have to give a little bit of flexibility.
Simon Marks joins us live from Washington, D.C. for more on this. Simon, the American economy is straining under the virus. Tell us more about the unemployment data, even worse than people expected.
Yes, definitely, Steve. It just came out about 18 minutes ago. Within the last week, 6.6 million people in the United States have claimed unemployment benefit. That is up from 3.3 million the previous week. So, in other words, in the last 7 days, an additional 3.3 million people have signed on for unemployment benefits. Bear in mind, that doesn't present the entire picture, because the self-employed here are not eligible for unemployment benefits, so they're not reflected in those numbers. But this is an absolutely seismic leap in the numbers of Americans claiming unemployment benefit in a country, by the way, where there is a stigma attached to the whole process of signing on for social benefits. So the true number, economists argue, is going to be substantially larger than that, and the trajectory that the United States is on now, deeply agonizing for President Trump and senior figures within his own government. Very worrying for the stock markets, of course. There is one financial analyst quoted in today's lead story in the New York Times arguing that the United States is now on the brink of the mother of all financial meltdowns, with grave concerns about the long-lasting impacts of this and how long it may take for the U.S. economy to pull itself out of this tailspin.
Let's look at the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So something like 8 in 10 Americans are living under stay-home orders. Why are the numbers still surging so dramatically then?
Well, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, urged once again New Yorkers to observe the stay-at-home warnings that he had issued in New York State. And New York, of course, is the epicenter of the pandemic. So if people are not observing the stay-at-home warnings there, once you move to other parts of the country, like those that the president was just referring to, where there are relatively low rates of infection still, behaviors have not changed. 11 of America's 50 states, that's 22% of America's 50 states, have yet to issue stay-at-home orders and lockdowns. We saw the governor of Florida finally relent just yesterday. Stay-at-home order is kicking in there now, but there are still states that haven't done it, and that, of course, is what gravely worries public health officials. They're also worried about the movement of people. You know, last week in the United States, the Transport Security Administration, which staffs all the airports here, says they processed 154,000 passengers. Now, that's way down on usual passenger levels, but where are all those passengers flying to? Where on earth are they going? That's one of the reasons why the government here may be considering a clampdown on domestic travel, as well as having obviously restricted access to international flights already.
Yeah, Simon, as if there isn't enough to sort of grapple with this national crisis in the States, there's also an international sort of tiff brewing with China over alleged deception. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump tried to damp that down yesterday himself, having previously himself stoked it. As you know, the President of the United States argued at one of his news briefings, I think around 10 or 12 days ago, that China knew about the coronavirus outbreak 3 months. He was very specific about the timing there. 3 months before the first cases were publicly disclosed and information was shared with the United States. He's also accused the Chinese of spreading rumors that he says are completely unfounded, that coronavirus originated with the US military. Now, at his press briefing last night, the president sought to damp all that down and said, look, we're not very pleased with the Chinese about all of this, but now is not the time for the sort of the blame game. But there are other leading Republican voices here that are very much arguing that it is time for the blame game. And I think the fear among US-China watchers here is that as we head towards the November election, that argument that the Chinese are to blame, that reparations may be required in some fashion, you could hear that argument increasingly being voiced by some on the campaign trail here.
All right, many thanks for those many updates. Simon Marks speaking to us from Washington, D.C.